So now let's actually write our very first line of JavaScript code. So here I am. I'm in my text editor, Visual Studio, and this is the code that we just set up in the last lecture. So I hope that you've already downloaded the starter files from the course. Here you can see I've got them right here on my desktop. So it's in this folder here. And can you see here that I have the index.html file? Terrific. So now going back to the VS Code text editor, all we have to do in order to start a new project, I'll just go to the top here and I'll click a file. And then we open it and I'll click to open. Okay, so that the folder that I want as my project folder is this one here, okay? All right, so now all I have to do is hit the open, and this is the new project folder, and it opens here this main, this index.html file. So you see here that this is just the very bones HTML structure without any JavaScript in it right here at this point, right? Okay, so let's actually add some JavaScript, shall we? Now, of course, there are more than one way to do this. There are a couple of ways which we can add JavaScript to a website. And the first way is with inline scripts. The second way is to add an external JavaScript file in which we can then add all of our JavaScript code. So why don't we just start with inline script? So all we have to do here is write script, give it some space, and then in here we can write our very first line of JavaScript. So what we're going to do now is simply print to the JavaScript developer console. We can just type in some text, okay? So now all we have to do is write console.log and then put my parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis, I write some text. Let's just write hello world. All right, so this is the kind of a standard text that we print out whenever we're learning a new language or starting up a new app or something like that, right? But you know that, right? All you have to do is search on hello world and you'll be able to see its origins and why it's used everywhere. But I'm sure you'll find out something if you do that. Anyway, let's get back to it. We have to finish the line, and we always add a semicolon, just like this. All right, so let's have a look at our very first line of JavaScript code. Now, all it does is log to the developer console this text, hello world, right? So now I'm going to save this, and after that, I'm going to open up my browser console, and we'll be able to see the result. So I'm going to leave this here and open up the folder, double-click to index.js file. And then it's going to open it just right in the browser. So in our code editor, we write our code. And then in the browser, we will be able to see our result. And actually, to be able to see these results, we have to open up our JavaScript developer console. And you do that by just hitting Command or Control Option J on your keyboard. All right, so it's a shortcut that works on whatever operating system you're on, probably a Mac or a Windows. So you can also right-click, hit Inspect, and that will also get you to the console. So here you see that we already have our hello world printed to the developer console. And you see on the side, the edit comes from index.html on line 15. All right, so exactly this line that we have here. So, isn't that great? It works. Again, there's nothing really fancy here, right? But you do see how it goes from one to the other. So all we have to do is log some text to the console. And that's what we're going to do throughout the sections. So we're going to log some text to the console because we're not really doing anything else here in the browser. All right, so it's not actually a real website yet. But that's something that we are going to take hold of a little bit later. But for now, we're just going to be learning this JavaScript language. So we'll be logging some values here to the developer console, and this just happens to be the perfect way to do it. Okay, so this is how we do inline script. Now let's have a look at how to add an external script to our site, all right? Now, first of all, we'll need to create a new file. And I'll call it script.js, okay? And now let's actually add the same code here. So console.log parentheses, and then this time let's say hello from separated file. So we wrote this just to be able to see the difference in this text on our console. And then back in our index.html file, we can now, of course, delete this code here. And we'll leave the script because we still need it. But now what we need to do is define the source attribute. So we write source, then script.js. How's that? So now our script file and our HTML file are linked because of this. Now, if the script was like in another folder, like, for example, let's say it's called JavaScript.js, then we would have to write like js/script.js. But of course, that's not the case here. I'm just pointing out the difference. So we're just going to get rid of that. So that's all we have to do to add an external script to our website. So why don't we go back to our browser and reload. And now we see the hello from separated file. Then you can also see that it comes from the script.js on line 1 now. So that's exactly what we expected. All right. So from now on, we're going to use this script.js file here because it's pretty much always best to have the code in an external file. I'll tell you the advantage of the inline script is that we don't have to load an additional file, but it's still better to have everything in an external file because it allows us to nicely keep the HTML clean and the JavaScript separated in different files. All right, so that's what we're going to do throughout the rest of the course. You haven't already mastered JavaScript yet, but that did go by pretty quickly, huh? Seems pretty simple so far. All right, so that's it for this lecture. You did learn the difference between inline and external scripts. You also wrote your very first line of JavaScript. We logged this text into the console. So now we'll take a break right here and continue in the next section.